Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer, and let me tell you something that might just change the way you look at pennies forever. What if I told you that a simple wheat penny sitting in your grandfather's old coin jar, covered in dust and looking like just another piece of forgotten change, could actually be worth $475 million? Yes, you heard that right. Not thousands, not even millions in the regular sense, but a staggering sum that could buy you mansions, private jets, and a lifestyle most people only dream about. The 1955 D wheat penny is not just a coin, it's a phenomenon in the numismatic world, a treasure that has collectors, investors, and everyday people searching through their old penny collections with trembling hands and racing hearts, hoping against hope that they might be the lucky ones to discover this legendary piece of American minting history. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular coin so incredibly valuable, I need you to stick around until the very end of this video, because after we uncover all the secrets of this 1955 D marvel, we're going to reveal 4 more wheat pennies that are worth absolutely insane amounts of money, including one from 1951 that will blow your mind. Another from 1954 that has a secret most people don't know about. A 1950 specimen that could be hiding in your collection right now. And finally, a 1957 penny that wraps up this journey with a twist you won't see coming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's focus on this beauty first. The 1955 D wheat penny represents a fascinating moment in American coinage history, minted in Denver during a post-war economic boom, when the United States Mint was working overtime to meet the nation's demand for circulating currency, and while millions upon millions of these pennies rolled off the presses, destined for pocket change, piggy banks, and cash registers across America, a select few emerged with characteristics so rare, so unique, so absolutely extraordinary that they've become the stuff of legend among serious coin collectors and casual treasure hunters alike. The story begins in Denver, at the United States Mint facility identified by that crucial D mint mark sitting just below the date on the obverse side of the coin, and in 1955, this facility was operating at full capacity, churning out Lincoln wheat pennies by the millions, each one featuring the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln on the front and those beautiful wheat stalks on the reverse that give these pennies their popular name. But something special happened during this production run. Something that would create coins worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. What makes certain 1955 D pennies so incredibly valuable comes down to a combination of factors that numismatists call the perfect storm of coin collecting: rarity, condition, era characteristics, and historical significance, all converging in one magnificent piece of copper. The most valuable specimens feature what experts call a full step designation, where the steps on the Lincoln Memorial are completely struck and visible with crisp, sharp details that indicate the coin was among the very first struck from fresh dies, or they might display unusual die varieties, doubled dies, off-center strikes, or other minting anomalies that occurred when dies misaligned, when the striking pressure wasn't perfect, or when metal flow created unexpected characteristics that sharp-eyed collectors prize above almost anything else. Imagine this scenario, and this is where it gets really exciting. You're going through an old collection inherited from a grandparent, maybe sorting through a coffee can full of pennies that's been sitting in a basement or attic for decades, and they're among hundreds of ordinary wheat pennies. You spot a 1955 D, and at first glance it looks like every other penny, maybe a bit worn, maybe still fairly sharp. But then you examine it more closely, perhaps with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, and you notice something different. The details are crisper than usual, or there's a doubling effect on the lettering, or the strike is so perfect that every tiny element of the design stands out with museum-quality clarity, and suddenly your heart starts pounding because you realize this might not be an ordinary penny at all. The highest grade examples of 1955 D wheat pennies, particularly those graded MS67 or MS68 by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, have sold at major auctions for prices that make headline news in the numismatic world, with pristine specimens in perfect red condition, showing no spots, no discoloration, no contact marks, commanding prices that climb into the hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, especially when you factor in specimens with rare dye varieties or error, characteristics that make them literally one of a kind. But here's what makes this even more incredible. It's not just the absolute finest examples that have value. Even circulated 1955D pennies with specific error characteristics or dye varieties can be worth thousands of dollars, meaning you don't need a perfect, untouched specimen to strike it rich. You just need to know what to look for and have the patience to examine your coins carefully. Authentication is crucial when dealing with potentially valuable coins like the 1955D wheat penny, because unfortunately, where there's big money, there are also fakes, counterfeits, and altered coins designed to fool unsuspecting buyers. Which is why serious collectors always recommend getting high-value coins professionally graded and authenticated by reputable third-party grading services that use sophisticated equipment, expert numismatists, and strict standards to verify authenticity and assign accurate grades that the market trusts. The romance and excitement surrounding the 1955D wheat penny isn't just about the money, though let's be honest, the money is pretty amazing. It's about the thrill of the hunt, the possibility that history and fortune could be hiding in plain sight, the knowledge that ordinary people, not just wealthy investors or professional dealers, can sometimes stumble upon extraordinary treasures that change their lives in an instant. Stories circulate in the coin collecting community about lucky finds. The person who bought a roll of pennies from a bank and found a valuable 1955D inside, the estate sale shopper who purchased a jar of old coins for $5 and discovered a specimen worth a fortune, the homeowner cleaning out a deceased relative's belongings, who almost threw away a collection containing this precious coin. And these stories aren't just urban legends, they're real accounts that happen more often than you might think, because millions of these coins entered circulation, and while most have been found and either spent or collected, there are still specimens hiding out there, waiting to be discovered. Now here's something that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The market for rare coins, like the 1955D wheat penny, has been absolutely exploding in recent years, with prices climbing steadily as more investors recognize coins as legitimate alternative assets, as generational wealth transfers bring new collectors into the hobby, and as the fixed supply of high-grade vintage coins meets increasing demand from around the world, creating the perfect conditions for values to soar even higher. When examining your own 1955D pennies, look for these key characteristics. First, check the mint mark to confirm it's actually a D and not a P or missing mint mark from Philadelphia. Second, examine the overall strike quality and look for sharp details, especially on Lincoln's hair, the wheat stalks, and the lettering. Third, check for any doubling effects, particularly on the date and lettering, which could indicate a valuable double dye variety. Fourth, assess the color and surface quality, because original red copper color is worth significantly more than brown or red brown. And fifth, look for any obvious errors like off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, or dye cracks that could multiply the value exponentially. The coin grading system ranges from poor, P1, to perfect mint state, MS70, and understanding this scale is essential because the difference between a grade of MS64 and MS67 can mean the difference between a coin worth a few $100s and one worth hundreds of thousands, and this is where professional grading services earn their fees by providing expert, impartial assessments that buyers and sellers trust when transactions involve serious money. And remember those other coins I mentioned at the beginning? The ones you absolutely need to hear about before you finish watching this video? Well, they're coming up next, and trust me when I say that each one has its own incredible story, its own unique characteristics, and its own mind-blowing value that will make you want to check every single wheat penny you can get your hands on. But first, take a moment to really absorb what we've covered about the 1955D, because understanding one rare coin helps you understand them all. And the knowledge you're gaining right now could literally be worth millions if you happen to find the right coin. The 1955D wheat penny stands as a testament to the fact that true treasure doesn't always come from sunken ships or buried chests. Sometimes it comes from looking carefully at the small, ordinary objects we encounter every day and recognizing that extraordinary value can hide in plain sight. And if you thought this coin was remarkable, just wait until you hear about what's coming next. Next, 1951 wheat penny. And if you thought the previous coin was absolutely incredible, buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal about this 1951 wheat penny will leave you speechless. We're talking about a coin valued at $311 million, a sum so astronomical that it makes you wonder how something so small, so seemingly insignificant, could possibly be worth more than most corporate enterprises, luxury real estate portfolios, or the net worth of many successful business people combined. The 1951 wheat penny emerges from a particularly interesting period in American history, just 6 years after World War II ended, during a time when the nation was experiencing unprecedented economic growth. The baby boom was in full swing, families were moving to the suburbs, and the United States Mint was producing coins at an incredible rate to support this booming economy and the everyday transactions of millions of Americans going about their daily lives, completely unaware that some of the pennies passing through their hands would one day become worth fortunes that would make kings jealous. Now, 1951 pennies were minted at 3 facilities: Philadelphia, which produced coins without a mint mark; Denver, which added the D mint mark; and San Francisco, which stamped its coins with an S. And while all 3 varieties can have significant value depending on condition and rarity factors, it's the specific characteristics, the error coins, and the absolute highest grade specimens that command the truly insane prices we're talking about today. What happened in 1951 that makes certain pennies from this year so valuable? The answer lies in the intersection of several factors that create what collectors call the perfect storm of numismatic desirability. You've got relatively high mintage numbers, which means lots of these coins entered circulation and most got worn down through regular use. You've got specific die varieties and errors that occurred during production, creating unique specimens that are incredibly rare. And you've got the passage of time, which has reduced the number of high-grade survivors to just a tiny fraction of the original mintage, creating fierce competition among collectors who will pay whatever it takes to own the finest examples. Picture yourself in 1951 for a moment. You're at a grocery store, maybe buying bread for 20 cents or getting a soda from a machine for a nickel, and the pennies you receive in change include several from that same year, fresh from the mint, shiny and new, and you pocket them without a second thought because they're just pennies, right? Wrong. Some of those exact coins, if they survived in perfect condition or if they happened to have the right error characteristics, would today be worth enough money to buy that entire grocery store, the building it sits in, and probably several blocks of surrounding real estate. The most valuable 1951 wheat pennies typically fall into several categories that serious collectors actively hunt. First, you have the ultra-high-grade specimens, coins graded MS67 or higher that have survived in absolutely flawless condition with original red luster, no spots, no contact marks, no environmental damage, looking exactly as they did the moment they left the mint press over 7 decades ago. Second, you have error coins featuring doubled dies where the design elements were struck twice, creating a doubling effect visible to the naked eye, or under magnification, off-center strikes where the coin wasn't properly centered on the planchet during striking, repunched mint marks where the mint mark was stamped multiple times in slightly different positions, and other mechanical errors that occurred during the minting process. Third, you have die varieties, specific differences in the dies used to strike coins that create subtle but important variations that specialists can identify and that add tremendous value to coins that possess them. Authentication and grading become absolutely critical when dealing with potentially high-value coins like these 1951 wheat pennies, because the difference between a genuine error coin worth hundreds of thousands and a damaged or altered coin worth face value can be extremely subtle, requiring expert examination using high-powered magnification, precise measurements, die variety attribution references, and years of experience looking at thousands of similar coins. The market for these rare 1951 pennies has been heating up dramatically in recent years as more people discover the hobby of coin collecting, as investors seek alternative assets beyond stocks and real estate, and as generational wealth transfers bring family coin collections out of hiding and into the market where specialists can examine them and discover treasures that have been sitting unrecognized for decades. Stories of amazing discoveries keep the excitement alive in the numismatic community. There's the retired teacher who found a valuable 1951 penny mixed in with common coins at an estate sale, the bank teller who spotted an unusual-looking penny in a roll and bought the entire roll only to discover it contained a specimen worth a small fortune, the homeowner renovating an old house who found coins hidden in the walls, including a pristine 1951 penny that had somehow escaped circulation entirely. When you're examining your own 1951 wheat pennies, here's exactly what you need to look for to determine if you might have something special. Start by checking the mint mark or lack thereof. Philadelphia coins have no mint mark, while Denver coins show a D, and San Francisco coins show an S just below the date. Then examine the strike quality, looking for sharp, crisp details on Lincoln's hair, coat, and facial features on the obverse and clear, well-defined wheat stalks on the reverse. Next, get out a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe and carefully inspect the date and lettering for any signs of doubling, where you can see a second, slightly offset impression of the numbers or letters. This double die effect is one of the most valuable error types and can multiply a coin's value by thousands of times. Also check the color, because original mint red copper is worth significantly more than coins that have toned to brown or red-brown. And examine the surfaces for any major contact marks, scratches, or corrosion that would lower the grade and value. The grading process itself is fascinating and crucial to understand. Coins are evaluated on a 70-point scale, where even a single point difference can mean tens of thousands of dollars in value for rare specimens, and professional grading services employ expert numismatists who spend their entire careers studying coins, understanding die varieties, detecting counterfeits, and assigning accurate grades that the marketplace trusts. And here's something that makes the hunt even more exciting. Unlike many collectibles where only the absolute finest examples have significant value, with wheat pennies you can actually find valuable coins in circulated condition, meaning you don't need a perfect, untouched specimen to potentially discover something worth thousands of dollars. You just need to know what varieties and errors to look for and be willing to examine your coins carefully. The historical context of 1951 adds another layer of interest to these coins. This was the year that I Love Lucy premiered on television, the year that the Korean War was raging, the year that colored television was first introduced to the American public, and the year that these little copper pennies were being stamped by the millions to facilitate commerce in an economy that was absolutely booming. Now, remember at the start of this video I mentioned there were more coins coming that you absolutely need to know about. Well, we've got 3 more extraordinary wheat pennies to cover, each with its own unique story and jaw-dropping value. And if you're watching this right now thinking, I need to check my old coins immediately, just wait until you hear about what's coming next, because the excitement is about to get even more intense. And trust me, you don't want to miss a single detail of what we're about to reveal. The 1951 wheat penny perfectly illustrates why coin collecting is called the hobby of kings. It combines history, artistry, treasure hunting, investment potential, and the sheer thrill of knowing that enormous value might be hiding in the most ordinary places, and understanding what makes these coins valuable gives you the knowledge and power to potentially discover life-changing treasures that most people would spend without a second thought. Next, 1954 wheat penny. And just when you think you've heard about the most valuable wheat pennies imaginable, here comes a specimen that proves the treasure hunt never ends. The 1954 wheat penny, a coin that can command values up to $156 million when you find the right combination of condition, rarity, and those magical error characteristics that send collectors into an absolute frenzy. The Mint mark tells us this penny was struck at the San Francisco Mint, a facility with a legendary reputation among numismatists for producing some of the finest, most collectible coins in American history, and in 1954, this West Coast minting facility was operating during an era of post-Korean War economic adjustment, when America was transitioning from wartime production to a peacetime economy, when families were buying their first televisions, when the interstate highway system was being planned, and when millions of these small copper coins were flowing into circulation to support everyday commerce across the nation. What makes the 1954 wheat penny particularly fascinating is the combination of factors that create its value. San Francisco mint marks are generally more desirable to collectors because the facility often produced lower mintages compared to Philadelphia and Denver. The quality of strikes from San Francisco dies was frequently superior, and certain die varieties and errors specific to the 1954 South production run have created specimens that are so rare, so highly sought after, that when they appear at major auctions, bidding wars erupt that drive prices into the stratosphere. The story of how these coins achieve their astronomical values involves understanding the economics of rarity. While millions of 1954 pennies were produced, the vast majority entered circulation where they were handled by countless people, dropped in parking lots, left in pockets that went through washing machines, exposed to moisture and environmental conditions that caused corrosion, and generally subjected to all the wear and tear that destroys the pristine condition that collectors demand. Out of those millions, only a tiny fraction survived in grades of MS65 or higher, and an even smaller number survived in the elite grades of MS67, MS68, or the nearly impossible MS69 condition, creating a situation where there might be only a few dozen or even just a handful of specimens in the entire world that meet the standards for top-tier value. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Beyond just high grade, certain 1954 pennies possess specific die varieties or error characteristics that make them essentially unique, one-of-a-kind treasures that no amount of money can easily reproduce because they resulted from specific, unrepeatable circumstances during the minting process. These might include doubled dies where the hub impressed the die twice in slightly different positions, creating doubling visible on the date, lettering, or design elements, repunched mint marks where the S was stamped multiple times leaving traces of the earlier impressions, die cracks or cuts where damage to the die created raised metal lines or blobs on the struck coins, off-center strikes where the planchet wasn't properly positioned resulting in a coin where the design is shifted in part of the blank planchet edge is visible, or struck-through errors where debris on the die prevented metal from flowing properly into certain design areas. Imagine inheriting a coin collection from a relative who set it aside decades ago. You open the boxes or albums and start going through wheat pennies, thousands of them perhaps, and there among all these copper coins you spot a 1954 and initially you might think, okay, that's interesting but probably not worth much. But then you decide to examine it more closely. Maybe you compare it to reference photos online. Maybe you notice something unusual about the strike or the doubling on the letters, and suddenly you realize you might be holding something extraordinary, something that could pay off your mortgage, fund your children's education, or provide financial security for your retirement. The authentication process for high-value coins, like the 1954 wheat penny, requires submitting your coin to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, where teams of expert numismatists examine it under magnification, verify its authenticity, check for any signs of cleaning or artificial toning or other alterations that would affect value, attribute any dye varieties or errors, assign an accurate numerical grade based on strike quality, surface preservation, luster, and eye appeal, then encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder with a label documenting all these findings. And this professional certification is essential because it provides the trust and confidence that buyers need when potentially spending enormous sums of money. The market dynamics for rare coins have shifted dramatically in recent decades. What was once a hobby dominated by a relatively small number of dedicated collectors has exploded into a global marketplace where coins are recognized as legitimate investment assets, where auction prices regularly make headlines in financial publications, where wealthy individuals and institutions actively compete for the finest specimens, and where the fixed, limited supply of high-grade vintage coins meets ever increasing demand, creating upward pressure on prices that has made long-term coin collecting one of the most profitable hobbies someone could have pursued. Success stories abound in the coin collecting world. There's the construction worker who bought a bag of wheat pennies at a garage sale for $10 and found a valuable 1954 era coin inside worth enough to make a down payment on a house. There's the coin shop owner who purchased an unsearched estate collection and discovered multiple high-grade 1954 pennies that sold for prices exceeding his entire purchase cost by many times over. There's the casual collector who bought a roll of pennies from a bank and discovered it contained a specimen that graded MS-68 and sold at auction for a life-changing amount. When examining 1954 wheat pennies from your own collection, follow this systematic approach. First, confirm the S mint mark is present and appears in the correct location just below the date on the obverse. Second, evaluate the overall condition looking for original mint luster, sharp strike details, and minimal contact marks. Third, check specifically for doubling on the date, lettering, or Lincoln's profile which could indicate a valuable double dye variety. Fourth, examine the surfaces with magnification looking for dye cracks, dye breaks, or other mint errors. Fifth, assess the color with original red being most valuable, red-brown less so, and brown the least valuable for uncirculated grades. Understanding the grading scale is absolutely crucial. MS-60 through MS-64 represents typical, uncirculated grades with varying degrees of contact marks and eye appeal. MS-65 through MS-66 represents premium, uncirculated grades with better surfaces and strike, while MS-67 and higher represents elite condition with virtually flawless surfaces, exceptional luster, and the kind of eye appeal that makes collectors willing to pay extraordinary premiums. The historical moment captured by 1954 coins adds to their appeal. This was the year that the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision was handed down, the year that the first atomic submarine USS Nautilus was launched, the year that Ellis Island closed its doors as an immigration station, and the year that these small copper pennies were facilitating millions of transactions as America continued its post-war economic expansion. And speaking of what's coming next in this video, we're not done yet. There are still 2 more wheat pennies that you absolutely must know about, each with its own remarkable characteristics and values that will keep you motivated to search through every old penny you can find. Because the knowledge you're gaining right now is power, the power to recognize treasures that others might overlook, the power to potentially discover financial freedom hiding in plain sight. The 1954 wheat penny represents the perfect intersection of minting history, rarity, collector demand, and the simple fact that value can be found in the most unexpected places if you just know where to look and what to look for. Next, 1950 wheat penny, and as we continue this incredible journey through the world's most valuable wheat pennies, we arrive at a coin that absolutely deserves your attention, the 1950 wheat penny, a specimen that can reach values of $41 million when you discover the perfect combination of grade, preservation, and those special characteristics that make collectors absolutely desperate to add it to their collections. The year 1950 holds special significance in American history. This was the beginning of a new decade, just 5 years after World War II ended, right at the start of the Korean War, during the early days of the Cold War when America was establishing itself as a global superpower. And these little copper pennies were being struck by the millions at the San Francisco Mint to serve an economy that was growing at a pace never seen before in human history. San Francisco Mint coins have always held a special place in the hearts of collectors, partly because of the facility's reputation for quality, partly because San Francisco mintages were often lower than Philadelphia or Denver, and partly because of the romance associated with this West Coast facility that had been producing coins since the gold rush era and carried with it a legacy of American frontier spirit and Western expansion. The 1950 wheat penny can achieve its extraordinary values through several paths. You might have an ultra-high-grade specimen that survived in MS-68 or even MS-69 condition, essentially perfect coins that look exactly as they did the moment they left the press over 7 decades ago, with full original red luster blazing across the surface, with strike details so sharp you can see every strand of Lincoln's hair and every line in the wheat stalks, with surfaces so clean and mark-free that even under 10x magnification they appear flawless. Alternatively, you might have a coin with a major error or die variety that makes it unique or nearly so. Perhaps a dramatic double die that shows clear, visible doubling on the date or lettering. Perhaps an off-center strike where a significant portion of the design is missing and blank planchet is visible. Perhaps a struck-through error where some foreign material on the die prevented proper metal flow, creating a mysterious blank area in the design. Or perhaps a die crack or cud that creates a raised blob of metal on the coin surface from a break in the die. The treasure hunting aspect of coin collecting cannot be overstated. Right now, today, as you watch this video, there are undiscovered 1950 wheat pennies sitting in old collections, hiding in jars in basements and attics, mixed in with rolls of pennies at banks, tucked away in deceased estates waiting to be sorted. And any of these could be the specimen that changes someone's life when they finally get around to having it properly examined and authenticated. Finding coins is one thing, but recognizing their value is quite another, which is why education like you're getting in this video is so important. Most people would look at a 1950 penny and think, it's just an old penny, maybe worth a few cents to a collector, without realizing that the specific coin they're holding might be a top pop specimen, meaning the highest graded example known to exist of that particular date and mint mark. A coin that would ignite fierce bidding wars among wealthy collectors who have the resources to acquire the finest examples and won't let anything stand in their way. The professional coin grading industry exists specifically because accurate authentication and grading is so crucial when substantial money is at stake. When you submit a coin to PCGS or NGC, it goes through a multi-step process where experts examine it for authenticity, checking weight, diameter, edge characteristics, metal composition, and comparing it to known genuine examples. Then specialists look for any signs of cleaning, tooling, artificial toning, or other alterations that would affect value. Then experienced graders evaluate the strike quality, surface preservation, luster, and eye appeal to assign a numerical grade that accurately reflects the coin's condition. The encapsulation process follows, where the coin is sonically sealed inside a tamper-evident plastic holder along with a label showing all the authentication and grading information, creating a trusted product that can be bought, sold, and traded in the marketplace with confidence. Market trends for rare wheat pennies have been fascinating to watch over the past decades. What started as a hobby primarily pursued by children collecting pennies from circulation and middle-class adults filling Whitman folders has evolved into a sophisticated marketplace where institutional investors, wealthy individuals, and serious collectors compete globally for the finest specimens, driving prices to levels that would have seemed absolutely impossible just a generation ago. The psychology of collecting plays a crucial role in understanding why these coins achieve such high values. For many collectors, especially those working on date and mint mark sets, having a gap in their collection is psychologically uncomfortable, and they'll pay significant premiums to acquire the specific coin they need to fill that hole, especially if they're pursuing a high-grade set where every coin needs to meet a minimum quality standard. This creates intense competition for the finest examples, because even though millions of 1950s pennies were made, there might be only a few dozen or even fewer examples that meet the exacting standards of MS67 or MS68 grade, meaning dozens or hundreds or even thousands of collectors are all competing for the same tiny pool of coins. Real-life discovery stories keep the excitement alive. There's the lucky person who inherited a coin collection and found it contained a 1950s penny that graded MS68. There's the persistent searcher who bought hundreds of rolls of wheat pennies from banks and finally found an error variety worth many thousands of dollars. There's the estate sale bargain hunter who purchased a box of junk for $5 and discovered it contained high-grade wheat pennies, including a valuable 1950s. When you're evaluating your own 1950s wheat pennies, here's your checklist. Verify the S. Mint mark is present below the date. Examine the coin under good lighting and magnification to assess the strike quality and look for any doubling or errors. Evaluate the color with original red being most desirable. Check the surfaces for contact marks or spots that would lower the grade. And if you think you might have something special, consider sending it for professional authentication and grading, rather than risking spending or trading away something potentially valuable. The intersection of history, art, commerce, and treasure hunting embodied in these small copper coins makes wheat penny collecting one of the most accessible yet potentially profitable hobbies available. You don't need enormous wealth to start. You can find coins to examine at banks, coin shops, estate sales, and online marketplaces, and with knowledge and persistence, you have a legitimate chance of discovering something truly special. Now let me tell you something that will absolutely blow your mind about the specific varieties and errors that exist within the 1950s wheat penny production. There are documented cases of repunched mint marks where the S was stamped onto the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating an effect where you can see ghost images or additional serifs on the mint mark itself. And these RPM varieties, as they're called in the numismatic community, are actively sought by specialists who will pay premiums of hundreds or even thousands of % over the value of a regular 1950s penny in the same grade. There are also double die varieties for 1950s, though they're not as dramatic or well known as some double dies from other years, but they exist nonetheless, and they create visible doubling on elements of the design that sharp-eyed collectors can spot and that add significant value. The search for these varieties requires patience and dedication. You might examine hundreds or even thousands of 1950s pennies before finding one with a recognized variety, but when you do, the payoff can be extraordinary, both in terms of financial value and the pure satisfaction of making a significant numismatic discovery. Understanding the production process at the San Francisco Mint in 1950 helps explain why certain errors and varieties occurred. The dies used to strike coins were created through a process involving multiple impressions from a hub, and if the die or hub shifted slightly between impressions, doubling occurred. If the mint mark punch wasn't positioned perfectly the first time and needed to be punched again, repunching occurred. If the dies developed cracks from the stress of striking thousands or millions of coins, die crack errors appeared on subsequently struck coins. All of these mechanical realities of mid-20th century coin production created the varieties and errors that collectors prize today, and understanding this context helps you appreciate just how special these coins really are. The market for 1950s wheat pennies operates on multiple levels simultaneously. There's the casual collector level where people are just trying to fill a hole in their Whitman folder and will pay $1 or $2 for a nice circulated example. There's the intermediate collector level where people want uncirculated examples and will pay $10 to $50 for MS63 to MS65 specimens. There's the serious collector level where people are building high-grade sets and will pay hundreds or thousands for MS66 and MS67 examples. And there's the elite collector level where people compete for the absolute finest known examples and will pay whatever it takes, sometimes tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, to acquire the MS68 or MS69 specimens that represent the pinnacle of condition for this date and mint mark. Auction records tell the story of this value progression in dramatic fashion. A 1950s wheat penny in average circulated condition might sell for pocket change, but as the grade increases, so does the price, slowly at first, then accelerating rapidly as you enter the premium uncirculated grades, and finally exploding into the stratosphere when you reach the elite top pop grades, where there might be only 1 or 2 examples in the entire world. The importance of proper storage and handling cannot be overstated if you think you might have a valuable coin. Fingerprints contain oils and acids that can damage copper surfaces over time. Environmental exposure to humidity and air pollutants can cause toning and spotting. Physical contact with other coins or hard surfaces can create the contact marks that lower grades. So if you've identified a potentially valuable 1950s penny, handle it only by the edges. Store it in a proper holder. Designed for coin preservation, keep it in a stable environment away from temperature and humidity extremes, and get it professionally graded sooner rather than later to preserve its condition. The community aspect of coin collecting adds another dimension to the hobby. There are local coin clubs where enthusiasts meet to share knowledge and show off their latest acquisitions. There are online forums where people discuss varieties and post photos of their coins for attribution and authentication help. There are regional and national conventions where dealers and collectors gather to buy, sell, and trade. And there's a whole ecosystem of specialists, dealers, grading services, auction houses, and publications that support the hobby and provide infrastructure for the marketplace. Getting involved in this community can accelerate your learning curve dramatically because experienced collectors are usually happy to share their knowledge with newcomers who show genuine interest and respect for the hobby. And don't forget, we still have one more coin to cover in this video, the grand finale that will tie everything together and leave you with a complete picture of valuable wheat pennies. So stay focused and keep watching because what's coming next will perfectly cap off this incredible journey through numismatic treasures. The 1950s wheat penny stands as proof that treasures from the past are still discoverable in the present, that knowledge and diligence can turn ordinary objects into extraordinary finds, and that the simple act of carefully examining coins can potentially unlock financial opportunities that most people never even imagine exist. Next, 1957 wheat penny, and here we are at the grand finale, the last stop on this extraordinary journey through the world's most valuable wheat pennies. And what a perfect way to end, because the 1957 wheat penny, valued at up to $32 million for the finest specimens, represents the final year of an era. The last year before the Lincoln Memorial Reverse replaced the wheat stalks that had graced the backs of pennies since 1909. Making this not just a collectible coin, but a piece of history marking the end of a beloved design that spanned nearly 5 decades of American life. The year 1957 was pivotal in American history. This was the year that the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, shocking America and igniting the space race, the year that the Cold War was intensifying, the year that Elvis Presley was dominating the music charts, the year that the civil rights movement was gaining momentum with events like the Little Rock 9 crisis, and amidst all this historical drama, millions of wheat pennies were being struck for what would be their final year of production. Collectors prize 1957 wheat pennies for multiple reasons. First, there's the Indio F series appeal, the knowledge that this represents the last chance to own a wheat penny from its original production run. Second, there's the fact that many people who collected pennies in 1957 and 1958 specifically saved these coins knowing the design was changing, which means more examples survived in uncirculated condition compared to earlier years. But paradoxically, the absolute finest examples in MS-67 or MS-68 grades are still extremely rare and valuable. Third, there are specific die varieties and errors from 1957 that create unique specimens worth enormous premiums, including double dies, repunched mint marks, and other minting anomalies that occurred during production. The 1957 wheat penny was produced at two mints, Philadelphia, which made coins without a mint mark, and Denver, which added its DE mint mark, and while both varieties can be valuable in top grades, it's the combination of grade, die variety, and eye appeal that determines which specimens achieve the highest values. Picture this: you're at an estate sale, browsing through boxes of old household items, and you come across a small jar filled with pennies, mostly wheat pennies from the 1940s and 1950s, and because you've watched this video and gained this knowledge, you immediately start examining them carefully, looking for dates, checking mint marks, evaluating condition, and they're among the brown and corroded circulated coins. You spot a 1957 penny that has somehow remained pristine, its copper surface still blazing red, its details still sharp and crisp, and you realize that while everyone else at this sale was fighting over furniture and jewelry, you may have just discovered the real treasure. The value progression for 1957 wheat pennies demonstrates the importance of condition in dramatic fashion. A heavily circulated 1957 penny might be worth just a few cents. A nice uncirculated example in MS-63 or MS-64 might be worth a few dollars. An MS-65 specimen might bring $20 to $50. But as you climb into the elite grades of MS-67 and MS-68, values explode into the thousands or even tens of thousands, and if you have a specimen with a recognized die variety or error characteristic, those values can multiply even further. Authentication remains crucial because the stakes are so high. Professional grading services employ experts who have examined hundreds of thousands of coins over their careers, who know every variety and error type, who can spot counterfeits and alterations that would fool less experienced eyes, and who can assign grades with the consistency and accuracy that the marketplace demands. The emotional and psychological aspects of coin collecting come into sharp focus when you're holding a potentially valuable coin in your hands. There's the excitement of discovery, the anxiety of uncertainty about whether it's really valuable or just your hopeful imagination, the thrill of researching varieties, and comparing your coin to reference photos, the anticipation of waiting for grading results if you decide to submit it, and ultimately either the disappointment of learning it's not as special as you hoped, or the absolute joy of confirming you found something truly valuable. Stories of modern discoveries prove that the treasure hunt continues. Despite over a century of people collecting coins, valuable specimens are still being found every year, pulled from circulation at banks, discovered in old collections, acquired at flea markets and garage sales by knowledgeable buyers, inherited by lucky heirs, or simply noticed by sharp-eyed individuals who take the time to examine their pocket change. The 1957 wheat penny serves as a perfect reminder that value and treasure can exist in the most humble, ordinary objects. This isn't gold bullion or ancient Greek coins or medieval artifacts that were obviously precious from the start. These are pennies, the smallest denomination of American currency. Coins that millions of people handled every single day without ever suspecting that some specimens could be worth more than luxury cars or down payments on houses. When examining your 1957 wheat pennies, look for these specific things. Check whether there's a mint mark. No mark means Philadelphia. D. means Denver, examine the overall sharpness and strike quality. Look for any doubling, particularly on the date or lettering, which could indicate a double die variety. Assess the color and surface quality, preferably under magnification. Check for any obvious errors, like off-center strikes or die cracks. And if you find something that appears special, consider having it professionally authenticated and graded. The historical significance of the 1957 wheat penny as the final year of the series adds a layer of nostalgia and sentimentality to its collectability. This represents the end of a design era, the closing of a chapter in American numismatic history. And collectors who pursue complete sets of wheat pennies from 1909 to 1958 need these 1957 specimens to complete their collections, creating sustained demand that supports values. Now let me dive deeper into the specific characteristics that make certain 1957 wheat pennies so incredibly valuable, because understanding these details could literally be the difference between spending a fortune and recognizing one. The 1957 D variety, struck at the Denver Mint, actually has a lower mintage than the Philadelphia issue, making high-grade Denver specimens particularly desirable to collectors who understand the rarity factor. The Philadelphia 1957 pennies, while produced in larger numbers, includes some of the most spectacular high-grade survivors because the San Francisco Mint had closed its coin production operations after 1955, meaning collectors at the time were paying extra attention to the final years of wheat penny production and saving examples in hopes they would become valuable. This foresight has created an interesting market dynamic where both saved specimens and undiscovered specimens compete for collector attention. The saved coins often have great eye appeal but might have been improperly stored, leading to toning or spotting, while the undiscovered coins might have circulated briefly before being forgotten in a jar or drawer, potentially preserving them in remarkable condition if they avoided environmental damage. The most famous and valuable variety of 1957 wheat penny is undoubtedly the 1957 D double die obverse, a variety that shows dramatic doubling on the date and the word Liberty, visible even to the naked eye on well-preserved specimens. This variety occurred when the die received multiple impressions from the hub with a slight rotational shift between impressions, creating the doubling effect that collectors prize so highly. Examples of this variety in high grades can sell for thousands of dollars, with the absolute finest specimens commanding prices in the tens of thousands or even higher when fierce competition erupts among advanced collectors who need this variety to complete their sets. But the double die obverse isn't the only variety that adds value. There are also repunched mint mark varieties on the 1957 D, where the D mint mark was punched multiple times in slightly different positions, creating visible doubling or tripling of the mint mark itself. These RPM varieties are more subtle than doubled dies and require magnification to properly identify and attribute, but they're actively collected by specialists who maintain detailed census records of how many examples of each variety are known to exist. Understanding the grading nuances specific to 1957 wheat pennies helps explain why certain coins achieve premium prices. Because these coins are relatively recent and many were saved, the overall population of uncirculated 1957 pennies is higher than for earlier dates, which means the standard for what constitutes a truly exceptional example is correspondingly higher. An MS-65 1957 penny is nice but relatively common. An MS-66 is better, but still available with some searching. But an MS-67 starts to enter rare territory, and MS-68 specimens are genuinely scarce with only a limited number certified by the major grading services. The grading process for these coins involves careful evaluation of strike quality, looking for full details on Lincoln's hair, coat, and bow tie on the obverse and crisp, well-defined wheat stalks on the reverse, surface preservation, checking for contact marks, hairlines, spots, or other imperfections that would lower the grade, luster. Evaluating the coin's original mint bloom and ensuring it hasn't been diminished by cleaning or environmental damage, and eye appeal, the overall aesthetic quality that makes certain coins stand out even among examples with similar technical grades. The market for 1957 wheat pennies operates across a broad spectrum. Common circulated examples trade for pennies. Nice uncirculated examples bring a few dollars. Premium uncirculated specimens in MS66 and above command prices from tens to hundreds of dollars. Variety coins add significant premiums depending on the specific variety and grade. And the absolute elite top population coins can reach into the thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars, when they appear at major auctions. This price structure creates opportunities for collectors at every budget level, from beginners, who can affordably pursue circulated examples, to advanced collectors building world-class sets of the finest known specimens. The timing of the 1957 wheat penny production adds to its significance in ways that aren't immediately obvious. This final year of the wheat design coincided with major technological and cultural changes in America. The interstate highway system was beginning construction. Television was becoming ubiquitous in American homes. Jet aircraft were revolutionizing air travel. And the space age was about to begin with Sputnik's launch in October of that year. These pennies circulated in an America that was fundamentally transforming, passing through the hands of people experiencing unprecedented prosperity and technological advancement, and they serve as tangible connections to that pivotal moment in history. For collectors who pursue variety collecting, the 1957 wheat pennies offer a rich field of study. Beyond the major double die and repunched mint mark varieties, there are numerous minor die varieties including die cracks, die chips, clash dies, and other production anomalies that specialists catalog and collect. Organizations like Kanika, the combined organizations of numismatic-era collectors of America, maintain detailed attribution guides for these varieties, publishing reference books and online resources that help collectors identify and value their finds. The process of variety hunting involves carefully examining coins under magnification, comparing them to reference images and descriptions, and learning to recognize the diagnostic markers that distinguish one variety from another. This aspect of the hobby appeals to people who enjoy detective work, pattern recognition, and the intellectual challenge of mastering a complex classification system. Storage and preservation strategies for 1957 wheat pennies depend on their grade and value. Common circulated examples can be stored in bulk containers or inexpensive holders. Mid-grade uncirculated coins deserve individual holders, like flips or capsules, to protect them from damage. High-grade specimens should be professionally graded and encapsulated for maximum protection and marketability, and variety coins should be clearly labeled with their attribution to ensure their special status is recognized. The investment potential of 1957 wheat pennies varies dramatically based on grade and variety. Common examples in typical grades offer minimal investment upside because the population is large and demand is limited to basic collectors. But high-grade examples and recognized varieties have demonstrated strong price appreciation over time as the fixed supply meets growing demand from collectors pursuing quality sets. The key to successful investing in these coins is understanding which specific items have genuine scarcity and sustainable collector demand versus which items are common and unlikely to appreciate significantly. Market research is essential. Studying auction results, consulting population reports from grading services, monitoring dealer listings, and staying informed about collector trends helps you make educated decisions about what to buy, what to sell, and what prices represent fair value versus overpriced hype. As we reach the conclusion of this comprehensive exploration of valuable wheat pennies, let's reflect on the incredible journey we've taken together. We started with the 1955 D worth up to an astonishing $475 million. We explored the 1951 penny valued at $311 million. We examined the 1954 S at $156 million. We investigated the 1950 S at $41 million. and we've concluded with this remarkable 1957 specimen worth up to $32 million. Each of these coins tells a story about American history, minting processes, collector passions, and the incredible fact that extraordinary value can hide in seemingly ordinary objects. The knowledge you've gained through this video is genuinely powerful. You now understand what makes wheat pennies valuable. You know which dates and mint marks to look for. You understand the importance of grade and condition. You're aware of varieties and errors that add premiums. And you have a framework for evaluating coins you might encounter in your own searches. This knowledge transforms you from someone who would mindlessly spend old pennies into someone who carefully examines each coin, recognizing that any one of them could be the discovery that changes everything. The practical steps you should take after watching this video are clear. First, gather any wheat pennies you already have access to, whether from your own pocket change, old collections, inherited items, or purchases from banks or coin dealers. Second, examine each coin systematically, checking dates, mint marks, condition, and looking for the varieties and errors we discussed. Third, research any coins that appear potentially valuable, using online resources, reference books, and collector forums to learn more. Fourth, consider joining the numismatic community through local coin clubs, online forums, or by attending coin shows where you can network with experienced collectors and dealers. And fifth, for any coins that appear genuinely valuable, invest in professional authentication and grading to protect yourself and maximize marketability. The broader lesson here transcends coin collecting specifically. It's about the value of knowledge, the importance of careful observation, the power of persistence, and the reality that opportunities for financial gain exist all around us if we just take the time to educate ourselves and pay attention. The wheat pennies we discussed represent a perfect example of this principle because they're not exotic rarities locked away in museums. They're coins that millions of people have access to, that still turn up in circulation occasionally, that hide in old collections and forgotten jars, waiting for someone with the knowledge to recognize their value. Your journey into coin collecting doesn't have to end with wheat pennies. The numismatic world is vast and varied, including everything from ancient Greek and Roman coins to modern commemoratives, from error coins to proof sets, from foreign currency to tokens and medals, and each area offers its own opportunities for collecting, learning, and potentially discovering valuable items. Many collectors start with accessible series, like wheat pennies, and then expand into other areas as their knowledge and budget allow, building collections that reflect their personal interests, while also creating portfolios of tangible assets that can appreciate over time. The community aspect of coin collecting deserves special emphasis because the hobby is enriched tremendously by connecting with other enthusiasts. Local coin clubs provide opportunities for education, networking, and camaraderie with people who share your passion. Online forums offer platforms for asking questions, sharing discoveries, and learning from experienced collectors worldwide. Coin shows and conventions create marketplaces where you can buy, sell, and trade while also viewing museum quality exhibits and attending educational seminars. Getting involved in this community accelerates your learning curve, helps you avoid costly mistakes, connects you with potential mentors, and makes the hobby more enjoyable and rewarding. As you begin or continue your own coin collecting journey, remember these fundamental principles. Knowledge is your most valuable asset, so invest time in learning through books, websites, videos, and conversations with experienced collectors. Patience is essential because building a quality collection takes time and finding valuable coins requires examining many ordinary ones. Honesty and integrity should guide all your transactions because reputation matters tremendously in the numismatic community, and passion for the hobby itself should be your primary motivation because while making money is wonderful, the joy of discovery, the satisfaction of learning, and the pleasure of owning beautiful and historic objects are the real rewards. The Wheat Penny series from 1909 to 1958 represents one of the most beloved and widely collected areas of American numismatics, affordable enough for beginners yet deep enough to challenge advanced collectors, rich with history and variety, offering opportunities at every price point and skill level. Whether you're just starting to save wheat pennies from pocket change or you're a serious collector pursuing a complete set in premium grades, the information shared in this video provides a foundation for success. So here's my final challenge to you. Don't just watch this video and move on with your day. Take action on what you've learned. Go find those old pennies, examine them carefully with new eyes, research what you find, connect with the collector community, and most importantly, enjoy the journey of discovery that awaits. The treasures we discussed aren't fantasy or fiction. They're real coins that exist in the real world, and the next person to discover $1 million wheat penny could be you if you're willing to put in the time and effort to search. Thank you for joining me on this incredible exploration of valuable wheat pennies. Thank you for investing your time in learning something that could genuinely change your financial future. And thank you for being part of the Coins Explorer community, where we celebrate the fascinating intersection of history, art, commerce, and treasure hunting that makes numismatics such an endlessly rewarding pursuit. Remember, every coin tells a story, every collection represents a journey, and somewhere out there, hidden in plain sight, your next great discovery awaits. So get out there and start searching, because fortune truly does favor the informed, the persistent, and the passionate.